for chairing the session on promoting global mind. And we have 4 papers in this session. The first paper will be by Dr. Shruti. What is the topic? And she will be giving a paper on righteous education taught in the Upanishads and its influence on society. So each paper presenter will be given 15 minutes time. And after all the paper presenters complete, if we have time for discussion, maybe we will have 5 or 10 minutes for discussion. Please just note down the questions of each paper and you can ask them at the end of all the papers. Now I call upon Dr. Shruti to present her paper.
Shri Sadguru Charanarvindabhyam Namaha. Namasabhayai Sadhyakshayai. Righteous education taught in the Upanishads and its influence on society. The fact that education is the foremost need for an all-around personality development of mankind is without any contention. The more the limit of man's thought process extending, the greater the limits of the world are decreasing. This vast world is under a parasol of knowledge. With the limits of knowledge extending, the main goal of great thinkers all over the world has been to have a knowledge-based society. Education can be divided into 2 categories, one which can lead to the overall development and other which can lead to the progress of only certain trivial things. Though the world is getting globalized, many stark realities of this world like greed, terrorism, hunger, communal rights, suppression of the fellow beings, wars, casteism, lack of mutual faith, etc. stand in front of us, posing a great threat to this mankind. On one side, the world is currently at its peak in terms of widening the horizon of knowledge, and the knowledge from the West is shaking hands with those from the East. Ancient education and modern education are traveling in parallel, but on the other side, one country is deeply engrossed in destroying the other country with constant animosity and with the greed of not allowing it to progress. Problems are all over, not just between the countries, but in our own neighborhood and within our own minds. For all these problems, education alone can be the lone answer. It is already said that there are 2 kinds of education. The second kind of education is the more mundane, worldly education. This education can only grow the intellectual capacity of human beings, make them earn money and just enjoy the mortal benefits of the same. The Upanishads tell about the same like this: Dve vidye veditavye iti hasma yad brahmavido vadanti para chaiva aparacha tatra apara rugvedo yajurvedah shiksha kalpo vyakaranam niruktam chando jyotishamiti athapara yaya tadaksharam adhigamyate. Meaning, the Brahmajnanis tell that there are 2 kinds of knowledge. The first one is called Paravidya and the second Aparavidya. While Aparavidya is possessed by the Laukikaha, Paravidya is chosen as a path by those who have an urge to become the supreme enlightened souls, or by those who want to possess the supreme knowledge. In this way, that knowledge which is required for cleansing one's soul from its impurities and that which can reflect on one's conscience in knowing the supreme power or the Brahmajnana is embodied in what we call the Upanishads. Listening to, understanding and practicing these Upanishads can make a human being to realize his own soul. The Upanishads hence make an authoritative amendment for the overall development, peace and progress of man and the society he is part of. Na me steno janapade na kadartho na madhyapo na anahitagnihi na avidvan svairini kutaha. O Rishis, listen. In my society there are no thieves, drunkards, illiterates, greedy, adharmikas, or people misusing their freedom for ill activities. This is how my community is. So says Ashwapati, who belonged to the Kaikeya society, to the sages about his healthy society. The Upanishads in this verse have clearly told about the attributes and features of righteous society. This is the main essence of our culture. The enlightened soul tells them, as stated above, when the sages request him, "You being an Atmajnani, please let us know the truth that you have found about the Supreme Power." This kind of a society needs to be developed. Only such enlightened souls can be the cause for the same. And the development of such souls can happen only with attaining spiritual knowledge. When Raikva, who was involved in deep meditation and contemplation of his own mind, is approached by Janashruti to come to his kingdom, Raikva, being an enlightened soul, tells to him, "Bhavadiya godhana gajadhana vajidhana ratnadhanaihi name kinchana praptavyamasti etat sarvam bhavadiyameva. Your wealth from herds, elephants, horses, gold shall all be with you itself. Please let me be the way I want to be." This not only shows how eminent and noble his character was, but also reiterates that enlightened souls are completely stripped of greed and affinity towards wealth. Ishavasyamidam sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunjitaha magridhak kasya svidhanam. This world is entirely made and shielded by Ishvara. So when everything is in his form, it's apt to live by sacrificing all kinds of worldly pleasures. When everything is possessed by the Supreme Power, there is no distinction as to whether it is mine or his. When it occurs to the mind that all wealth belongs to the Supreme Power, there is no scope for any war and enmity. This verse unites the entire world. It cleanses the egotism, greed, and preaches the sacrifice, the eternal truth, thereby laying a strong foundation for a healthy society. Matradevo bhava, Pitrudevo bhava, Acharya Devo bhava. This verse gives an ultimate respect to all those who shaped our lives, our mother, father, and guru. This era of growing old age homes, there is a lot to learn from the Upanishads, which treat us, our parents, as God. Gratitude is a great quality to possess. Everybody needs to cultivate the same. The Upanishads preach to see God in every creature around us. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyevanu pashyati sarvabhuteshu chatmanam tato na vijugupsate. One who sees himself in all the creatures around him, one who sees all the beings of the world in his own soul, he never gets sorrow. This is the great social thinking, and if this is the thought process of the entire social beings, then the world can be a better, peaceful place to live in. The following verse from Kenopanishad also conveys the same. Bhuteshu bhuteshu vichitya dhiraha pretyasmal lokad amrita bhavanti. Every being on this earth should see him in others. The world is mortal. I myself am mortal. Only God is the supreme being, should be the eternal truth imprinted in man's mind. If this is so, problems get solved by themselves. The root cause of all problems are the 6 desires, are Arishad Vargas: Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsarya, lust, anger, greed, attachment, pride, and jealousy. Only on suppressing these Arishad Varga can a man get more composed and stable in his life. A society can gain good things out of such a man. This kind of purifying one's thoughts can only happen with constant dedication, focus, and practice. The Upanishads have shown several paths for purifying one's mind. The Upasana Marga is also one of them. Hiranmayena patrena satyasya pihitam mukham tatvam pushan apavrunu satya dharmaya drishtaye agne naya suphataraye. All these verses tell about the cleansing one's mind. The same Upanishads tell about those who are impure-minded and who don't want to gain knowledge about the soul in the following way. Yastu avijnanavan bhavati amanaskas sada shuchihi sa nasa tatpadam apnoti samsaram chadhigacchati. One who is ignorant about the knowledge of the soul will stay out of his mind and gets impure day by day. He has no other option than to fall to the pit of the samsara chakras. The fetters of worldly existence are not fruitful for a samsari. Every day a new problem starts surrounding him. He will neither be happy himself nor be able to make others around him happy. The only solution for this problem is to traverse the path of enlightenment. Those who are in this path will be happy themselves and will also keep others around them happy. A man can only give whatever he already has. If he has happiness, he can give the same. If he has only sorrow and enmity in him, there is no way that he can give happiness to others. The Upanishads which propagate the message of Atma Jnana are the knowledge of soul, and the Jnanakanda convey various other messages. The first verse of the Ishavasya Upanishad hails highly about the notion of sacrifice and sannyasa, and explains about the same. Though it is evident that knowing about the Brahma or the Brahmajnana is the foremost accomplishment of life, achieving the same is not an easy task. In the second verse, it is said that though the path of asceticism is the ultimate, for those who can't traverse in this path, there is also this karma marga or the path of religious action. The verse for all the varnashramis amends thoughts on doing one's karma always without any expectation throughout one's life. The path of Upanishads is difficult to traverse. As the Upanishads self-proclaim, Kshurasya dhara nishita duratyaya. Even then, as a patient can only get cured by the bitter medicines that a doctor gives, likewise, the only medicine for getting out of the worldly desires and successive rebirths is adopting the path of Upanishads. Though moksha is said to be the ultimate, the other paths of dharma, artha, kama are equally important to attain moksha. Dharma, to do one's responsibilities as per the guidance of one's parents, gurus and Vedas or elders, aptavakyam shabdaha. To always tread to the path of morality. This is a way of life in which one supposed to do his daily activities amidst meditation, control of his desires of the five senses, penance and self-study. Dharana dharmamityahuhu. Dharma is nothing but constantly doing the righteous activities. At the same time, adharma is nothing but constantly doing the ill activities. Artha, earning through the right path, being responsible to take care of himself and his family. As said in Kathopanishad, na vittena tarpaniyo manushyaha. Hence, one should earn only in the right path. Kama, as said in Bhrugopanishad, Anando brahmeti vijanat, anandadhyaiva khalvimani bhutani jayante, anandena jatani jivanti, anandam prayanti abhisamvishantiti. Kama is nothing but suppressing the demon within himself and to enjoy the pleasures of the world in the right path with utmost eternal bliss. In the Brahmopanishad, etam anandamayam atmanam upasankramati, anando brahmeti vijanat. There is a philosophical discussion of the concept of ananda or bliss of mind. With this kind of bliss, the mind, body, soul and one's family life, social life gets even better. Dharmartha kamaha samameva sevyaha yo hyeka bhaktaha sanaro jaganyah dvayostu daksham pravadanti madhyam sa uttamo yobhiratas trivarge. In this way, the chaturvidha purusharthas are accepted as the virtues of life. On the same lines, the path of sadhana or attainment is told beautifully even the Narayanopanishad as annena pranaha pranair balam balena tapaha tapasa shraddha shraddhaya medha medhaya manisha manishaya manaha manasa shantihi shantya chittam chittena smritim smritya smaram smarena vijnanam vijnanena atmanam vedayati. Other verses like Satyam Vada, Dharmam Chara, Swadhyayan Ma Pramadaha also substantiate various aspects of the moral responsibilities of man. Righteous life and the social life he has to agree upon. They tell about the responsibilities of Grihastha, Brahmachari and Vanaprastha also. If only gaining intellectual knowledge, collecting information itself considered as education, then it can be rather called as literacy. If economic growth alone is considered to be the real progress, problems crop up from all walks of life, may it be one's individual life or his social life. If education in the right sense, spiritual education, and that of educating one's mind is provided to man, he finds the truth, reason for his place, and the various problems that we currently face in this world might as well vanish. If righteous virtues take the place of evil thinking and ill character, where is the scope for wrongdoings? If I taken over by we, if we all see the entire world as a single global village, there will be not any problems facing us. The ancient sages all prayed for totality or togetherness of this world. Their thoughts were always oriented on well-being of all the creatures on earth. Let us also pray for the same. This is the essence of our Sanatana Dharma. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayah, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet.
Now I call upon Dr. P.T. Suresh Kumar, Sri Shankara College, Kaladi. He will present his paper on spiritual implications of Ishavasya Upanishad.
Respected chairman of the session, other scholars, the topic is spiritual implications of Ishavasya Upanishad. So, I'm reading the paper.
You are not speaking into the mic. Kindly, please.
Vedas are the foundations of Indian knowledge system. Upanishads are the end part of Vedas. So far, more than 1,000 Upanishads have been deciphered. Among them, 108 are said to be important, and some selected 10 out of them are said to be very important. Among the 10 Upanishads, Ishavasya is of paramount importance. Then this paper is prepared mainly emphasizing the first verse of Ishavasya Upanishad. So at the very beginning, I like to say something about the greatness, the glory of Ishavasya Upanishad, especially in three perspectives. First one, though there are thousands of Upanishads, 1,000 Upanishads, and 108 of them is said to be important and 10 very important. Among the 10 Upanishads that belongs to Prasthantraya, the popular slogan is that Ishakana Kata Prashna Munda Mandukya Taitiri Aidireyam Chandokyam Brhadaranyagam Tadha. Atra Isha is said at the very beginning. So it is because of the greatness and or because of the glory of these Upanishads. So it belongs to Prasthantraya and it is mentioned first. The second thing, especially I came to this Upanishad, I attracted this Upanishad, and many attracted because in the modern times, Gandhiji said, let the whole Hindu scriptures can be turned into ashes. Ishavasya will exist as long as the first verse let the whole Hindu scriptures can be turned into ashes. Hinduism will survive as far as the first verse of Ishavasya will exist. So it is a similar notion, similar quotation. When we, a similar saying one can see, when we go through the verse of Emerson, a Western philosopher, writer and thinker, he said, let the whole libraries of the world can be burned. We have the Republica of Plato. In the same manner, some other modified way, Gandhi has said, let the whole Hindu scriptures can be turned to ashes. Ishavasya will exist as long as the first verse of Hinduism will survive as long as the first verse of Ishavasya will exist. Then here, one thing that I want to know is that Gandhiji, who said about the greatness of these Upanishads, has written many on Indian philosophy and on Western also. He knows that we have 4 Vedas, 2 epics, and many 18 Puranas, all these things. He said, let the whole Hindu scriptures can be turned to ashes. Hinduism will survive as far as the first verse of Ishavasya will exist. That much importance he given to Ishavasya. So he started a journal, Indian Opinion in Africa, Young India in India, Harijan and in India. And he write with both left and right hands and a lot of things he write. He answered many questions through Harijan and Young India for the readers. I think he has not mentioned any other Upanishads anywhere, only Ishavasya. I want to clarify this also here. Respected scholars may guide in this thing, I think. He has not mentioned any other Upanishads, though he has written many things about our tradition, custom, culture, and many things he has written. And he has started 3 journals also. So that is the greatness of this Upanishad, second thing. And third, it is because of its spiritual implications. And the third thing, there is a critical thing that I want to mention is that some conflict, the aspect pointed out by Aurobindo. So not only Gandhi, Aurobindo, Tagore, Srinarayana Guru, Vivekananda, and many other philosophers and commentators of both ancient and modern time, medieval and contemporary age, have not forgotten to quote and comment upon these great Upanishads. All of them get very much interested in these Upanishads and tried their level best to interpret this Upanishad with a deep sense, interest, and insight. So before the first mantra of Ishavasya is very popular. It takes the following form: Om Ishavasyamidam Sarvam Yat Kinja Jagatyam Jagatyana Taktena Punchitha Magrada Kasya Siddhanam. Here, while commentating this verse, Shankara says, the great commentator Shankara says that the mantra beginning Ishavasyam, etc. are not to be used in karma because they are meant to reveal the true nature of self. For deep understanding, when we come across the word vasya, Ishavasya, or the dhatu is vas, it can be seen that this word has been interpreted with different meanings. Vas dhatu has got 3 different meanings. Vas achadane means to cover. Then vas nivase, to dwell or reside. And third, to smell. Vas vasane. For Shankara, the accepted meaning was, all this should be covered with the Lord. But Aurobindo did not agree with this view. He goes to the extent to say that 3 times God laughed at Shankara. First time when he returned to burn the corpse of his mother. Again when he commentated on Ishavasya Upanishad. And the third time when he stormed about India preaching inaction. Thus Aurobindo upholds the view that the verse stands for the meaning, all this is for the habitation by Lord. Similar is the view of Srinarayana Guru also. For Vivekananda, he goes much longer and tries to interpret this verse in tune with Shankara with some modification as follows. We have to cover everything with the Lord himself. And further he adds and modifies that not by false sorts of optimism, not by blinding our eyes to the evil, but by really seeing God in everything. Thus for Ishavasyam idam sarvam takes the meaning, see God everywhere. In some other way, or in other words, God resides everywhere. It refers to the same of Gandhi's vision. The Srinarayana Guru translated only Ishavasya into Malayalam. He was a social reformer in Kerala. He translated only this Upanishad. The Lord dwells in everything. Another popular translation gives the meaning, sing for the word Vasya. It is as follows: sing the universe in God and everything that lives on the earth. He who renounces truly enjoys. Do not hanker after others' goods. Now, how we can appraise this view? When something or everything is covered, automatically there comes 2 meanings. That is, in the cover and out of the cover. When something is covered, it reveals that something is uncovered. Thus, covering means to be incapable of revealing the true spirit of universality of the eternal principle. So, the word God resides everywhere seems to be more better to express the universality of the Brahman. Brahmatvat, Brahmanatvat, Brahma iti viyade. And again, he is the maker and unmaker. Then there is no scope for the question of covering and uncovering. God resides here everywhere. He seems to be a sarvam khalu idam Brahma. He is the maker, unmaker. He is rather grace, bliss. So no limit to cover, pocket. Then some other relevant possible implication from the first verse. This paper is mostly based on first paper. So the first verse says, a deep understanding of this verse reveals that it is both the end and means of Ishavasya Upanishad. Sometimes it is the sum total of the whole spirituality. Some of the possible implications of this verse are listed below. This verse exhibits the principle of creation, or say, the secret of creation. Ishavasya Saram Jagatyam Jagat, in this moving universe. So the principle of creation is some other way it is presented. It is the beginning. Om is the starting. Here Isha is Brahma. So Brahma is remembered here. So Ishavasya Idam Sarvam. So the principle of creation, at the very beginning, the principle of creation is some other way presented here. So it has a spiritual implication. Then Mayadhyakshena Pragadim Suyate Sacharacharam. Yadunana Kaundaya Jagadi Parivarta. Jagadi is moving. And again, some implication we can make. Then secondly, the line reveals the universality of Brahman. Okay, now next third comes. It underlines the principles of it itself become many. Ishavasya Idam Sarvam. This verse is next one. This verse is regarding the path of Jnanamargi, or how Jnanamargi should act and live. According to Shankara, this mantra is not used for karma, that is yajna purpose. So it is commonly known that the first verse stands for Jnanamarga. For some other thinkers, the principle of doing karma is explained here. Karma is also explained here because Mahagrudha Kasya Siddhana, some principle is there. So some sees the law of detachment in this first verse. So the step by step, the whole 18 verses can in some way or some other way summarize in this first verse. Gandhi believed that Ishavasya is the extension, Bhagavad Gita is the extension of Ishavasya. And third, next, this mantra explains the secret of doing karma without attachment, Mahagrudha, and creating prarabdhas, or how to do karma aiming salvation. Then next, this line speaks about the worship, upasana. It speaks about the worshipped, upasya. It explains about the result of worshipped, upasana phala. Thus, in a nutshell, it is the sum total of spirituality. It explains the universality of Brahman. Here, Brahman is called as Isha. I don't know, I want to know that in any other Upanishad, in anywhere, Brahma is called as Isha. So, Brahma, Pranava, Satyam, Jnana, Ananda, many names are there, many, it is called many, Omkara, something like that. These lines warns those who covered others' wealth. Mahagrudha Kasya Siddha, next line comes. Mahagrudha Kasya Siddhana means so those who take others' wealth should be punished. The punishment is to be mandatory because Ma is used. Mahagrudha Kasya Siddhana, Ma Nishada, something like this. In a negative form it is mentioned. So its methodology is surprising. So the creation is there, well beginning is there, the view of Karma Marga, Jnana Marga, Karma Marga, and the warning is also summarized in these three lines, in the first verse. The methodology of Upakrama, Upasamhara, all this we can see in the first verse and in the total 18 verse also. Some other argues that this line expresses the undividable nature of Brahman and Jagat. First line is Ishavasya Sarvam. Second line is Tektena Bunchida, this is the karma principle. So Jagat and karma. So some other argues that this line expresses the undividable nature of Brahman and Jagat. Itaradharatvam. So Adhyasam is also there. It is the highest principle of spiritual integration. So the karma marga, nivritti marga, first line, second line, and some integration is there. And some other. This mantra is equal to the many of Shanti mantras. Om Purnamidam, Om Sa, something like that. So, and next, then next, this mantra emphasizes the importance of becoming constantly and continuously conscious about the greatness of Almighty. Sometimes the purpose of all mantras in all religion. So this mantra resembles the principle of Sravana, Manana, Nidhyasana also. And again, the founder of this SIF itself, Chinmayananda, often said, the true happiness depends upon not what you have, but it depends upon what you can give, even in most trying situation. The true happiness, Chinmayananda often said, I have read like that. The true happiness depends upon not what you have, but what you can give, even in most trying situation. So thus that is a true happiness. Then The mantra resembles the principle, and then education in all-inclusive universal spirituality can also be summarized in this first verse. That is, sometimes it may be the reason. This Upanishad and the first verse is often quoted throughout this seminar. And then what about the second verse? It is said to be Kurvan neveha karmani jijivishe chadam samaha evam toi na anyadedo asti inna karma lipyadare. It explains the principle of doing karma. Here the many lines of Gitas are coming to memory. Namam karmani limbandi name karma phales praha idimam yo abhijanadi karma padhyade. Something like. So it explains the importance of worldly laws and regulations and also the methods of coming out of such rules and regulations by obeying them. To quote Vivekananda, every duty is holy and devotion to duty is highest form of the worship to God. It is certainly a source of great help in enlightening and emancipating the deluded and ignorance encumbered souls of the bhadas, the bound one. Then again this mantra gives the principle that one has no right to live without karma. The well-known saying is that those who has no body labor has no right to eat. Again, it points out that karma, for the sake of karma, will never be a bondage. That work would not bound you, and that work will also bring blessing to other people. The spiritual implication is that a higher philosophy of life and work lead to spiritual growth and expansion. Here, Sankhya Prapide sthanam tado gairapi gamyate ekam sankyam cha yogam cha iya pashyati sapasya. Then third verse, the first verse of Ishavasana Sarvam, second, then third. This verse, Asurya namate loka anthena tamasa vrata tamste pretyavi gacchandi eke cha atmano janah. This verse is a warning to those who ignoring the principle of first and second verse. That is the path of both jnana and karma. Mahagrada Kasisiddhana is relevant in this third verse. They should be punished. How they should be punished? Asura namate logha andena tamasavrata. Tamste pretya abhigachan. So Asura means that devil's world for those who are ignoring these above principles. Means nobody has the right to live as they like. There is some protocol. This is the third type of people. There is a third type of people. That is there are three type of people fully surrendering to spirituality. The first line of the first verse, Jnana Margi, and some other karma margis and strive for spiritual developments. The second verse is 11, and the second line of the first verse is 11. And still there are some other who are ignoring these two principles and live as they like. They will reach in devil's world. In the words of Ishavasya, they are committing spiritual suicide. Atmajehanaha, it is continuing. The spiritual implication is that one has to select any one of the above explained path. One has no right to live as he like. Then the fourth verse, I am explaining the whole of the fourth. Fourth and fifth verse can be combinedly read. The features and universality of Brahman is explained. The sixth verse, the nature of the knower is explained. The seventh verse, the quality of the knower. And the eighth verse, here the nature, feature and allied qualities of Brahma is explained for its true and maximum understanding. Ninth verse takes the form, Andat Tama Pravishyandi Yo Avidyam Upasadi. Something like. The ninth verse means the necessity of knowing Atma and the necessity of life leading to realization of Atma is explained. The result of ignoring Atma is also emphasized. The 10th verse, Anyada Vidya Avidya, something like. In this 10th verse, the result of principle of Vidya and Avidya are distinguished. The necessity of true understanding between Vidya and Avidya is emphasized because of their opposite result and misguiding nature. Vidyancha, the 11th verse take the form Vidyamcha Vidyancha Yastat Vedo Ubhem Saha. Avidya Mrutyum Durta Avidya Amrtamastu. And the 12th verse, Anda Tama Pravishyandi, something like. The necessity of a demarcation between the worship of the manifested and unmanifested in its karana forms are illustrated in this 12th verse. This verse says that both go against the true spiritual progress and get misguided. The true meaning of the verse can be explained as meditating on the non-existent or world of duality. One enter into blinding darkness, and one who meditating on the impersonal Brahman as embodied or personified will enter into deeper darkness. All types of idol worship are negated here. The necessity of dedicating or worshipping eternal Purusha, or say the principle of Purusha worship, is emphasized for spiritual understanding. Most of the present day worshippers are mainly for attaining worldly pleasure, and its result is not salvation. Most of the worshippers are either money makers or power mongers. It is against true spiritual progress in terms of Ishavasya. And then the 13th verse, this verse says that the result of worshipping impersonal God and meditating upon the impersonal Brahman are different. The result. They bring forth different results. This is what we have seen from our great predecessors. 14th verse, the true way of spiritual path and its result is explained. And the 15th verse is often quoted and very popular. Hiranmayena patrena satyasyapihitam mukham tattvam poshan apavarano satya dharmaya drishteye. So here satya dharma is the quality to get spiritual vision. Satyanishta is a condition. The meaning of the prayer is that your face is hidden by golden vessels, means attracting worldly pleasure. Pleasure, uncover yourself. Pleasure means His grace this verse is in the form of a prayer. So His grace is required to attain Him, so that we may see your true form. After all, His grace is required to know or to realize Him, and the qualification is detachment towards the worldly pleasure. The implication is that one who is attracted or attached in worldly pleasure is not going to get His grace and is not going in the true spiritual progress of understanding Him or His principle of eternal grace and peace. Look in the words of Vivekananda. Manifest the divinity within you and everything will be harmoniously arranged around it. The view of Aravinda can also be synthesized here in some other way. In Savitri, Aravinda says, I know that I can lift man's soul to God. I know that He can bring immortal down. So, now after this word, Hiranmayena patrena satyasya abhidam mukham, the 16th verse is the continuation of the 15th verse. Because when Hiranmayena patra is removed, what happened? That is explained in this 16th verse. Next verse. Poshannegarsha yamas surya prajabatya vyuham rashmi samuha tejo yatte rupam kalyanatamam tatte pashyami so asavaso purushaha so ahamasmi. This verse is in close touch with the previous verse, like the verse of Ishavasya. It explains what happens when the golden vessel is removed. So the methodology is quite surprising. The meaning of the prayer of mantra is that, O sustainer of all, the main mover of the universe, controller of all, I am seeing that you are in me and we are the same. So please take me to you. Here the devotee has identified with the Brahman and felt the quest for earnest merging or unification. I want to become one with you. I have recognized that I am not different from you. So now what I want is surrendering my ego with was truly an illusion. So somebody may ask, there is no Mahavakya in Ishavasya. So when it is said that, so asavaso purushaha so ahamasmi, here we can see the Mahavakyas like Aham Brahmasmi, Tattvamasi, Ayamatma Brahma, three of the Mahavakyas are merged in a typical manner. Then after the 17th verse, this verse is in the form of an ultimate surrendering, saying that taking all my physical, mental and oral favorable actions, please guide me to the path of actual spiritual progress or moksha. Spiritual progress or moksha, I have no existence, I am going to ashes. Then Agni, last verse, sir, 2 minutes, 1 minute.
Please. Finish with
Finish. What I have. Yeah. Then this is the ultimate surrendering and in the form of prayer towards the cosmic. Then the last, in a nutshell, methodology is quite surprising. That is what the main thing. In nutshell, it can be said that Ishavasya being derived the name of the first verse Isha. For a detailed this first verse, it contains the unique code of conduct for all mankind. The first verse. The second explains the karma principle, something like. It explains the true nature of materialist, second. And third describes the path of one who ignore this. 4 to 8, the path of spirit. It records the fate of man who takes religion only outwardly. 9 to 14, and it prescribes a beautiful prayer to Supreme for knowledge, for self, and for deliverance from samsara. Thus, we can see that Ishavasya is an experience of psycho-socio evolution or spiritual growth with an apt introduction, necessary elaboration, and a surrendering prayer of conclusion. So, anyway, this some possible implication I have pointed out. For if one may go through this Upanishad, so my endeavor is successful. I express my deep gratitude to the organizers of this seminar and also for the chair of this session. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh Kumar. I now call Dr. Udayana Hegde from Karnataka Sanskrit University, Bangalore, to give his paper on, present his paper on Sanskrit education, the need of the hour.
अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. नमस्सभायै सभापतिभ्यश्च. गुरुवर्यान् वर्खेडिवर्यान् गुरुतुल्यान् नैयायिकमूर्धन्यान् झावर्यान् च प्रणम्य यथामति अत्र किञ्चित् प्रस्तुयेत्. My topic is Sanskrit education, the need of the hour. When education is taken in its original concept, it gets manifested in various harmonious norms and forms. As it is well known, education is a 5-pillar divine structure where students play the role of an idol established and worshipped every day. The second place will be occupied by creative and innovative teacher. Teacher is considered to be a son of goddess Saraswati. He must be competent, committed, and consistent in his chosen areas. The third place is occupied by parents. Their role is so vital that it cannot be substituted by any other faculty. Mother has got her own way and a unique role while structuring a totally blossomed personality of a child. Mother is the real role model to a growing child. Management committee got a very important role in developing a good institution by mobilizing all resources and developing an infrastructure for a sustainable educational institution. Apart from this, Academic Council, comprising a panel of scholars in different fields, got its own vital role to play. Thus, this 5-pillared structure of education is established and projected. Naturally, education will emerge totally to serve the intended goal of all inclusiveness through education. The ultimate happiness and prosperity can come from our being attuned to the universal principles. Our behavior and values that are not in harmony with the universal laws take us away from bliss, beauty, abundance. The real asset of a nation is not its natural resources, but people with right values. It is futile to think of economic reforms and progress without relinking ourselves with our lost values. All over the world, and more so in our country, what we need first and foremost are solutions that can be utilized on a wide scale on a long-term basis for re-establishing moral values. Education is not about studying and getting good marks. It is really a means to discover new things which we do not know about and increase our knowledge. An educated person has the ability to differentiate between the right and wrong or the good and evil. It is the foremost responsibility of a society to educate its citizens. A person becomes perfect with education as he is not only gaining something from it but also contributing to the growth of a nation. We must realize the importance of education. We must aim to ensure that each citizen of our nation is educated and independent. Education is a rope that can carry us to greatness. It is one of the most important things in life because without it, you cannot contribute to the world and do not have knowledge. Knowledge is power, so when you know what you can do, you can go that mile further. The National Policy on Education is a policy formulated by the Government of India to promote education amongst India's people. The policy covers elementary education to colleges both in rural and urban areas. The first NEP was established in 1968 by the government and the second was in 1986. It emphasizes three aspects in relation to the elementary education: universal access and enrollment, universal retention of children up to 14 years of age, revival of Sanskrit and other classical languages is the most important. To quote Dr. S. Radhakrishnan, the former President of India, the end product of education should be a free, creative man who can battle against historical circumstances and adversity of nature. Sage Patanjali, in his Vyakarana Mahabhashya, divides the education system into four parts: Agamakala, Swadhyayakala, Pravachanakala, and Vyavaharakala. UNESCO says there are four pillars of education. They are learning to know, learning to do, learning to live together, learning to be. These four pillars, we have to know it one by one. Learning to know. This type of learning is considered less with acquisition of structured knowledge than with the mastery of learning tools. It may be regarded as both a means and an end of human existence. Looking at it as a means, people have to learn to understand the world around them, at least as much as is necessary for them to lead their lives with some dignity, develop their occupational skills, and communicate with other people. Learning to do. This question is closely associated with the issue of occupational training. How do we adapt education so that it can equip people to do the types of works needed in the future? Learning to live together. Violence all too often dominates life in the contemporary world, forming a depressing contrast with the hope which some people have been able to place in human progress. Until now, education has been unable to do much to mitigate the situation. Can we do better? Can we educate ourselves to avoid conflict or peacefully resolve it? Learning to be. Education should contribute to every person's complete development. Mind and body, intelligence, sensitivity, aesthetic appreciation, and spirituality. All people should receive in their childhood and youth an education that equips them to develop their own independent critical way of thinking and judgment so that they can make up their own minds on the best courses of action in the different circumstances in their life. To redress the current state of human fragmentation, Sanskrit education for all is very much necessary. It is the need of the hour. The hurdles in the education system are to be taken care of. Sanskrit has been the vehicle of our culture and thought from time immemorial. Sanskrit is the fountainhead of the dharma, samskriti and darshan of the land, that is Bharat. Culture and language are inseparable. They go together. Hence, reviving Sanskrit is rejuvenating our culture. Rejuvenating our culture is reviving the Sanskrit language. Other Indian languages are also cultural languages, but Sanskrit is the common cultural language of the common man of India. Since other Indian languages are regional in nature, Sanskrit is the pan-Indian cultural language of India. Bringing Sanskrit back to the everyday life is bringing culture back to everyday life. Knowledge in Sanskrit is inevitable to pass on or transmit, communicate, give our cultural heritage to the next generation and to ensure its continuity from generation to generation. The role of the teacher in the educational setup is very important. It is beyond argument that teacher is the backbone of the society, country and educational system. He represents whole of the society. The citizens of tomorrow are his students and future of the country lies in his hand. The citizens of teacher plays an important role in different capacities. Student receive directions from his personality and he himself introduces several techniques to direct the student. Teacher also plays an important role as a helper and assists the students in the whole of the setup of the education. He assists the students in their problem and establishes the harmonious relationship with the parents. Teacher is also a social reformer. The other person equivalent to the teacher is a social reformer. A teacher is a spiritual preceptor, as in the Vedic period. A teacher is a communicator and provider of knowledge. A great teacher is one a student remembers and cherishes forever. Teachers have long-lasting impacts on the lives of the students, and the greatest teachers inspire students toward greatness. To be successful, a great teacher must have some qualities: an engaging personality and teaching style, clear objectives for lessons, effective discipline skills, good classroom management skills, good communication with parents, high expectations, knowledge of curriculum and standards, knowledge of subject matter, passion for children and teaching, strong rapport with students. A guru or a teacher cannot make the student study himself. He can just motivate them. Horse can just be taken up to the pond, but it can't be made to drink water. The very etymology of Acharya is that Asamanta Charatiti Acharya. There is a famous shloka, Achinoti hi shastrartham Achare sthapayatyapi Swayam acharate yasmat tasmad acharya uchyate. So, one who motivates becomes a good teacher. So, the task of Acharya is just to motivate. Even UNESCO opines that there is no term called teaching, everything is learning itself. In Sanskrit, learning is called adhiti. Dhvani, voice, and prajna, intuition, are the two strong instruments needed for effective learning. There is a saying in Sanskrit, prajna vivekam labhate bhinnai ragama darshanehi. In the Shikshavalli, Varna, Swara, Matra, Bala, etc. are dealt with. By the chanting of Amarakosha, Vishnu Sahasranama and other shlokas, the vocal cords gets activated. Sanskrit is the gateway to the heritage of scientific knowledge in ancient India. A sound knowledge in Sanskrit will ensure that one gets independent and direct access to the primary sources of that knowledge. Sanskrit has been the great unifying factor. Prayers like Gange Yamune Chaiva and masterpieces such as the Ramayana, Mahabharata and Gita in Sanskrit have bonded together. Down the ages, Sanskrit literature has always projected and depicted universal spirituality. It has never promoted regional or sectarian feelings. Sanskrit literature promotes and propagates an all-inclusive ideology on the lines of Ekam Sat Vipraha Bahudaha Vadanti, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, etc. Sanskrit is the torch-bearer of Vishwadharma, a concept that represents far more than its simple meaning, universal spirituality. पूर्वं ये अंशाः चत्वारः उक्ताः तद्विषये किञ्चिदिव विस्तरेण वक्तुमिच्छामि. Learning to know, learning to do, learning to live together, learning to be.
You have got only 3 minutes.
एते चत्वारः ये अंशाः सन्ति एते क्रमेणैव ज्ञातव्याः। आदौ लर्निङ्ग् टु नो, अनन्तरं लर्निङ्ग् टु डू, अनन्तरं लर्निङ्ग् टु लिव् टुगेदर्, अनन्तरं लर्निङ्ग् टु बी। यदि एतस्य क्रमस्य व्यत्ययः भवति, यथा इदानीम् आधुनिककाले दृश्यते, आदौ एव लर्निङ्ग् टु बी इतिवत् प्रवर्तन्ते, किन्तु आदौ लर्निङ्ग् टु नो, आदौ ज्ञातव्यं, ततः अग्रे प्रवृत्तिः करणीया। एषः न केवलं भारतीयसिद्धान्तः यः मया प्रतिपादितः, अपि तु विदेश स्कूल् डिक्लेर्स् संस्कृत literally means well formed or refined. It is a classical language predating Latin and Greek and has the ability to act as a model, teaching children the fundamental principles of language. Its grammar is thought to prevail as the underlying grammatical system of most Indo-European languages. This thorough knowledge of grammar ultimately gives the pupils a greater clarity and accuracy in thinking, reading and speaking, thereby preparing them well for whatever they will undertake in life. Sanskrit education is needed for comprehensive personality, which means physically sound, vitally pure, mentally sublimate, psychologically integrated, and spiritually rooted. All these qualities can be achieved through Sanskrit education, which is the need of the hour. Dhanyavada.
Thank you, Mr. Udayana. I now call upon Lyson KV from Kaladi Shankaracharya University to present his paper on alienation and contemporary predicaments, a panacea in Francian in spirituality. I am not very clear about the topic. Anyway, after hearing your paper, let me understand.
Okay. First of all, I register my gratitude for allowing a space here to conceptualize my ideas. And I always believe in Shakespearean dictum that brevity is the soul of wit. Yes. And my title is Alienation and Contemporary Predicaments, a panacea in Franciscan spirituality. It is related with Christian spirituality, especially Saint Francis, who is widely known as the second Christ in Catholic Church. And this is not a descriptive paper. It is a solution, and solution prescribed by Saint Francis by his life. And something about Saint Francis, as we know, he is very second Christ, known as second Christ in Catholic Church. But he doesn't write any kind of theoretical frameworks or any kind of books. That means he has a spirituality that is eco-spirituality, living with the nature, and he thought that all living beings have as a harmonious relation. There is no, as Christian theology says that man is the crown of creation. Saint Francis Assisi negates this kind of notion. And another thing is that why he doesn't write any kind of books or theoretical framework, because the ultimate factuality or reality about the Almighty God is that the mortal humans are not able to understand the nature of the Almighty God, who is omnipresent and omnipotent and omniscient. So what we have about the notions about the Almighty God, it is mere illusions. And Saint Francis Assisi knows this factuality. He has led such a kind of life. So he doesn't go for creating any kind of theoretical frameworks. So let me just present my argument of my thesis. As we know, in contemporary times, human beings are disturbed and distorted by alienation and loneliness. It is the common phenomenon, especially in postmodern or post-structuralist society face. Alienation or the fear, complex anxiety, tension and everything. The advanced technological man is an alienated being. As we know, technology has progressed and tension has increased. Due to this, a variety of symptoms are perceptible in the lives of the people. Alienation is a state of disharmony or corruption of the harmonious human life. People become selfish and narrow-minded. It brings a horrible situation where every man is an island. The consumerist culture has made drastic changes in human personality. As a result, humans lost their freedom and innocence, which replaced by anxiety, disappointment, and tension. Everything is measured by its utility. As a result, anything which is not capable of satisfying immediate human needs are considered as useless or waste. Technology separates us from a primary unity with nature. Human beings have to regain the state of unity with its essential reality. Franciscan spirituality is an effective solution to overcome this contemporary distorted predicament of the humanity where physical and metaphysical intersects. St. Francis of Assisi realized the everlasting interconnectedness and interdependence of humanity with nature. Although he saw the serviceability of many creatures as depends on humanity positive nature, Francis did not agree with this kind of Aristotelians who held that all things have their purpose to service of humankind. From Franciscan spiritual perspective, ultimate reality is not just the source of creation, it is very much also a part of creation, a part which we can interact on daily basis through our senses, and such experiences gain greater insight to the wonder of reality. His vision remains the position of human beings to be inextricably related to all other life forms within an interrelated and interconnected web that is part of the Almighty. So, this paper is an attempt to prove that Franciscan spirituality is an effective and healthy remedy for miserable contemporary predicament of humanity. It is an effective solution to get salvation from all types of postmodern symptoms, namely alienation, fear, meaninglessness, tension, sexual perversions, obesity, mental illness, etc. That drastically led the entire humanity to the tragic and chaotic condition. This is the end of my argument. Thanks.
Thank you very much. As promised by him, it was a very brief paper, also a thought-provoking paper. Thank you very much, Lyson, for that. Now, we have to conclude this session. But before concluding, I would just like to make my presidential remarks. So there were altogether 4 papers in this session. The first paper was by Dr. Shruti from Karnataka Sanskrit University. She talked on righteous education taught in the Upanishads and their influence on society. And she spoke about Paravidya and Aparavidya, and she brought out clearly the distinction between these two, quoting profusely from the Upanishads. There is shloka in Vishnu Purana said by Prahlada. He says, Aharartham karma kuryad anindyam. Kuryad aharam prana sandharanartham. Prana sandaryaha tattva jignasanartham. Tattvam jignasyam ena bhuyo na dukkam. So, what is the need for tattva jignasa? Means ena bhuyo na dukkam, so that you are not born again. So, in this context, Paravidya is very much important for every one of us. And she brought out, in her paper, she also brought out well the 4 virtues of Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. Here we should note that each succeeding one surpasses the earlier. To enjoy Artha and Kama, Dharma righteousness is essential. And in the Gita also, Lord says, Dharma aviruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshabha. So, Kama also is enjoined, but it is Dharma aviruddho bhuteshu kamosmi bharatarshabha, he says. So, thank you very much for the well-written paper, Dr. Shruti. The second paper was on spiritual implications of Ishavasya Upanishad. That was a well-written paper and it brought out the glory of the Upanishads, Ishavasya Upanishad. And emphasizing the greatness of the first verse of Ishavasya, he quoted Gandhiji that if the entire scriptures of Hindu be burnt to ashes, and even if the first verse of Ishavasya would remain, then that is Hinduism would survive and Hinduism would exist. And he was also quoting Aurobindo's criticism of Shankara, and I cannot resist my temptation to point out to this. In one of the seminars where it was a seminar on Aurobindo and Shankara, and there was a foreign scholar who made this remark that God laughed at Shankara thrice when he performed the last rites for his departed mother, and when he wrote a commentary on Ishavasya Upanishad which proclaims karma kanda, karma rituals, and the third when he ceaselessly travelled over the entire Bharat proclaiming the illusoriness of the world. And when this was pointed out as a criticism, I am reminded of my professor who was there in that seminar. He stood up and gave an answer for this. I would just like to recall what had happened then. He gave the answer that these three criticisms do not at all hold good in the case of Shankara, because if a sannyasin happens to be the only son of his mother, then it is sanctioned in the Dharma Shastras that he can perform the first day rites of the departed mother. So with this sanction alone that Shankara performed the last rites for his departed mother. That the remaining ceremonies he did not perform. Only for the first day, that is the funeral and all, that alone he conducted. And the second one is, since he wrote a commentary on Ishavasya Upanishad, which speaks of rituals, it is not opposed to Shankara's philosophy, because Shankara does admit karma as a remote means to the knowledge of Brahman, because karma is bahiranga sadhana for him, and at any rate the performance of rituals would bring in chitta shuddhi or cleansing of the mind. So there is no harm in Shankara writing a commentary on Ishavasya Upanishad. And the third one is, in order to popularize the theory of illusoriness, he had to travel incessantly all over Bharat to say that the world is illusory. So, in all the three ways, Shankara has not committed any blunder. And the rejoinder, the last sentence is more worthy to note here. It was my professor's statement, Professor Virinathan. He said, at any rate, Aurobindo did not keep company with God when, according to Aurobindo, God laughed at Shankara thrice. This was the statement made by him. So, this was a criticism which he pointed out in his paper. Wait, no, let me finish it. And then, also in Ishavasya Upanishad, Shankara extensively criticizes Jnana Karma Samuchevada, and he says, Parvatavatu akampyam, Jnana Karmanoho Bedaha Kimna Pashyasi, Parvatavatu akampyam. They are mutually opposed to each other. So, karma has been admitted as Bahiranga Sadhana in the system of Advaita. The third paper was on Sanskrit education, the need of the hour, by Udayana Hegde, again from Karnataka Sanskrit University, Bangalore. And keeping in tune with the institution from wherefrom he comes, naturally he has selected a topic to impress upon the audience that Sanskrit, the education of Sanskrit education is very much essential for the upliftment of the society. And he brought out he touched upon several factors that are important in the area of education. He quoted from the National Education Policy, which emphasizes the need for the revival of Sanskrit education, and it is the fountainhead of Dharma, reflecting our Indian culture and pan-Indian cultural language of India. And knowledge of Sanskrit is imperative for every Indian to keep pace with the modern society even. And the paper was highly informative, And only thing is, I was a little bit disturbed when he quoted a quotation from, from in a school from London, to which emphasizes the importance of Sanskrit. Always we have to hear a Max Muller or a Oberhammer or a Matilal or somebody who goes abroad and says something great about our country. Then only we realize the importance and need of it. And that is a shame on our part, I feel somehow. But anyway, at the same time, let us take it as an encomium paid to our Sanskrit language also. Let us take it in the positive aspect also. And thank you very much for that paper. And the last paper reader, Mr. Lyson, KV from Kaladi Shankaracharya University, he brought out clearly that that is, people always resort to something only on the basis of the purpose served by them. And his paper was very brief, and whatever it was a thought-provoking. He has allowed the audience to think over his paper. And as started by saying, he started by saying brevity is the wit of the soul, and he has justified his statement, and I thank him for the excellent paper, and I thank all the paper readers for giving us an excellent time, and before we go for lunch. So I thank the organizers once again for giving me a second opportunity to chair the session and share some of my thoughts. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm thanking the audience also for the patient hearing. Thank you.